Welcome to the archives. This edition of Gambling History and True Stories is brought to you by Our Casino Combat Podcast. Copyright 2025, Volcanic Dingo, LLC. All rights reserved.
Okay, let's dive into this. This is an absolutely fascinating story about a group of students who looked at a game of, pure luck and saw something completely different. They saw a solvable physics problem. We're talking science, secret computers, and taking on the house with a Newtonian edge. So here's the ultimate question in any casino, right? Can you actually beat a game of pure chance? I mean, when the odds are so mathematically stacked against you from the get-go, is there any way to win consistently? Most people, they're just going to say no. And here's exactly why they'd say no. Look at this number, negative 5.26%. That is the house edge. It's the casino's built-in advantage in every single game of American roulette. So what does that mean? Well, for every dollar you bet, over the long run, the house expects to keep more than 5 cents of it. It's just the slow, steady, and what seems like an absolutely unbeatable drain on your wallet.
Right. So that house edge is pretty much the foundation of that old saying, the house always wins. It's all designed to be this totally random system where, you guessed it, the only real winner is the casino. But what if it wasn't truly random? What if someone, somewhere, found a way to see a pattern hidden inside all that chaos? And that brings us to the heroes of our story. We're talking about a group who didn't see a game of luck at all. Nope. They looked at it and saw a physical system, one that's governed by predictable laws. And by doing that, they completely reframed the entire problem. So who were they? Well, they called themselves the Eudaemons. Back in the late 70s, these were physics students from UC Santa Cruz. And they're looking at the spinning wheel, the bouncing ball, and they see what everyone else missed. Classical mechanics just playing out right in front of them. It was a system of motion, of velocity, of decay. Something that, at least in theory, you could actually predict. And this right here, is the most important mental shift. They took the whole idea of gambling and just threw it out the window. For them, the casino floor was basically a laboratory. And every single spin of that wheel, that was an experiment. They were there to do one thing: collect data and run the numbers. Okay, so how do you actually do that? How do you build this into a real method? I mean, how do you turn a physics theory into a practical, on-the-floor strategy to beat a casino? Well, it took some incredible ingenuity and, you're going to love this, some really groundbreaking tech for the time. First thing, they realized they didn't have to be perfect. No way. Trying to predict the exact number out of 38, that's nearly impossible. All they needed to do was just tilt the odds a little bit in their favor. So their goal was way more realistic. Just figure out which 1/8 slice of the wheel, they called it an octant, the ball was most likely to land in. Now, to do that, they had to measure 2, and only 2, really crucial variables on every single spin. First, you've got the velocity of the ball, how fast it's zipping around that outer track. And second, you need the angular velocity of the rotor. That's the inner wheel that's spinning in the opposite direction. Okay, so here's how they put it all together. It's brilliant. One person, the observer, would clock the speed of the ball and the rotor. And how did they input the data? By tapping a little switch hidden in their shoe. This fed the information to, get this, one of the world's first wearable computers, which was also hidden in another shoe. That computer would then calculate the ball's orbital decay, basically predict when and where it was going to drop from the track, and then that little computer would signal back which octant they should bet on, all in a matter of seconds. So, okay, they've got the theory, they've got the process, and they've got this incredible hidden technology. They took a system that was a guaranteed loss and just threw Newtonian physics at it. So the big question is, what was the result? How much of an edge did all this crazy work actually give them? And the outcome, well, it was absolutely staggering. They didn't just, overcome the house edge. They demolished it. They took that guaranteed negative return and completely flipped it on its head into a massive positive expectation. Just let that sink in for a second. A plus 44% advantage. Think about what that means. For every single dollar they bet, they could statistically expect to get back $1.44. They had literally transformed one of the worst bets in the entire casino into, by a huge margin, the absolute best one. But of course, having this incredible mathematical edge is completely useless if you get caught, right? The casino is
always watching for people with a system. So, the Eudaemons' physics homework had to be paired with some serious psychology. You see, their true genius wasn't just the computer in the shoe. It was their ability to just blend in. They had to operate in a way that the pit bosses, these are guys trained to spot advantage players, wouldn't even look at them twice. They had to become, essentially, invisible in plain sight. So how on earth did they pull that off? Well, think about it. Casinos look for patterns. They're looking for players who always bet big or who use some kind of progressive betting system. The Eudaemons, they did the exact opposite. Their bets looked completely random. They placed smaller bets after the ball was already spinning. To the casino, that just looked like some impulsive tourist throwing down a last-second bet, not the final, calculated move of a professional team. They were operating right in the casino's blind spot. You know, when you boil it all down, this isn't just a clever story about beating roulette. It's a really powerful lesson about information, about data, and about fundamentally changing the rules of the game in any competitive system you can think of. And here it is. This is the real takeaway. The Eudaemons weren't playing roulette anymore. See, the casino thought it was hosting a game of chance, but the students, they were playing a game of physics. Because they had better data and a better model to analyze that data, they were just operating on a completely different level. They had redefined the game itself. So, this whole story leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. You know, from financial markets to sports analytics, what other games are out there in our world today that seem random, but are actually just complex physics problems in disguise, just waiting for someone to come along and measure the right variables? That's the real power here, right? Just seeing the world through a completely different lens. That wraps up this deep dive. This content was provided compliments of our Casino Combat podcast. Copyright 2025 Volcanic Dingo, LLC, all rights reserved. And a final reminder, this is for entertainment purposes only. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Win more, keep more, and we'll see you in the lounge.